Hi, we are Amy and Brian Williams, and I'm the young adults pastor here at Calvary. And we've been married for 7 years, 7 years, 8 in October. And yeah, this is our story. So, how we met. Well, even a little before that, I guess. I was working at camp, Forest Home, and had been up there for a while. And I guess some context in that of there's lots of ladies at camp, and I was an eligible bachelor. And so I had lots of comments pretty regularly of, why aren't you dating anyone? What about that girl? What about this girl? What about, she's awesome. And it was kind of a recurring theme for me for several years. And there were wonderful women, like amazing women who loved God, who were awesome. But I don't know. It just wasn't, I just was sort of like, well, maybe. I think I had thoughts along the way multiple times where I'd be like, well, I guess I'd like talk myself into like, well, she's pretty cool, I guess, she's awesome, like maybe. And then, but it just never made sense, I guess. Never made sense. And that kind of leads into how we first met, because Amy was coming up to be, was it intern?
Yeah, I was interning on the weekends. I was going to Azusa Pacific University, and I always loved going to camp, working at camp. And so I was talking to one of my friends about an internship, and she said, oh, there's a place called Forest Home. I think that you should check out interning there. So I called, I ended up getting the internship. And then that same friend told me, okay, so you're going to be an intern there. There's a guy there named Tiger. That's his camp name. Tiger, that I think you should get to know, and I think you should date.
So it was on both sides. So she got that. And on the other side, her boss, Michael White, who, wonderful part of the story. He's the guy who married us, which is pretty cool. But I remember Michael White being like, Brian, well, Tiger, because that's what everybody called me. He's like, Tiger, this intern, you got to get to know her. You got to get to know her. And I remember it making me a little bit mad. Like, I really liked Michael, but I was a little bit like, cool, Michael, whatever. Like, that's great, whatever. So we both kind of had this like, oh, there's this person up at camp. And camp's big. Like, there's lots of people. So why this person, And the first day we met, I was on the porch of our office, which is kind of out in the woods down along the creek. And Michael was giving Amy a tour of camp on her first day up there in the golf cart, bouncing over rocks and stuff. And
especially to your office, because his office was the bottom of this dirt rocky hill. So the golf cart was
a few golf carts didn't live long after making it down to our office, or cars also. Staff cars had some hard times. But I was working on something on the porch. I don't remember what.
I think you were there with a couple of people. I remember there being, I don't know, like BB guns or something. I don't know why I think there was
probably
something like
probably
that.
Something silly. And all I remember is you and Michael being like, oh, this is Amy. And we said hi to each other. And like, it's pretty awesome. I remember that moment so clearly, because I remember that being like like making the connection. Oh, this is the girl he's talking about. Like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Hi, Amy. Like in a way, it being like, I'm like, nice, great, cool. And that was kind of it. Like, I think it was
I felt the same too. Yeah. I just thought, oh, okay, Tiger, Brian, cool. I didn't think.
So that's the dude. All right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. That's how I felt too.
I feel like that.
Oh, here's a person.
All right. Okay. Like, there was no like love at first sight. No. Like, whoa. No. Like, it was just like, all right, cool. Hey, human. Like, you're nice, I guess. I don't know. Maybe we'll get to know each other and I'll think you're nice. Like, that was kind of the extent of it. And what kind of happened after that is a friend of mine, Kyle White, good dude. He and I at his parents' house who lived up there at camp, every Tuesday night, we would have guys cook night. So Kyle and I would cook, and we'd invite anyone who wanted to come for dinner on Tuesday nights to come join us for dinner. It's kind of a small community, so it's not like there's like a ton of people that could come, especially within our age range in the non-summer, like in fall. And so we would do that every Tuesday.
This was fall of 2010.
Yes.
2010.
Your last semester at AP.
Yeah. So I was only up there on the weekends. Oh, but now you're getting into 2011.
Oh, you're right. That was.
So I was only up there on the weekends in fall of 2010. And then I graduated from APU, and there was a full-time job doing the same job I was interning at. So I moved up to Forest Home full-time starting in January, right after I graduated. So January of 2011.
Yeah.
So this would be
Which makes a lot of sense, by the way, because Amy, if anybody knows Amy or spent time with Amy, she is wonderful and good at everything. Maybe not everything. I mean, you're not good at being really strong.
No, I can't.
She's good at so many things. But like, she just achieves. People see what she does, and she does things so well. So it just makes total sense that it'd be like, oh, the intern. Oh, we've never had an intern that we've taken on full time. That's just not what we do. And then be like, this one though, she needs to be full time. She's just so good at caring for people and doing things well. And thankfully,
it was my dream job. I was always really interested in hospitality. I love camp. And so it was my dream job. I'm so thankful that I got that job.
And I think even that camp connection is something that is important to us. We both love the same things. And as we got to know each other, which we'll get to how that happened in a moment, but like that, I think our love of hospitality, of caring for people, of the outdoors, of bringing people into a unique shared experience where they can engage God and be challenged in new ways. I mean, that's just so special to each of our stories and our lives, the things we value. And so I think for us, that camp experience, the fact that we met at camp, I think really shaped us being a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't know that you would have been into me at all.
We've talked about if we had met in high school, we wouldn't have.
No.
We wouldn't have.
I was not a good student, or I was kind of goofy. Yeah. I wasn't very straight-laced. I don't know that I still am. Maybe I'm more straight-laced.
We've said that we know that we would be friends. Like we would be friends. We, because he was in high school, you did water polo, I did swim. We know that we would have been friends, but I don't think we would have dated. I was more focused on academic. He wasn't.
I was not.
So, yeah. So it's good we met when we did.
It's really good. We met when
we did. Camp and outdoors, being outside of an academic setting.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was good.
It's also a place where we could see each other in the best light in a lot of ways too, which, but I don't think that was rose-colored glasses. I think it was who you were and who you are. And I'm thankful for that. So anyway, internship becomes full-time. During our internship, like I would see her from time to time, like when she's checking in guest, I'd drive through on my way home, or whatever it was I'd be doing. And I'd say hello to her and whoever else was working. But it was just being kind and just trying to be friendly and make people feel welcome. And that was kind of it. We didn't really interact much. It's like oh, hi. And that was it. Then she comes on full time, and that's when she comes to Guys Cook Night. Yeah. And
I remember being invited to Guys Cook Night and thinking, can I come to this? It's a Guys Cook Night. And then you explained it to me. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll come.
Which I think that really was like the start of our friendship. Because from that point on, you started coming every Tuesday, and we started getting to know each other more. But it wasn't necessarily like a focused on one another. It was just kind of like when we first met. It's like, well, here's another person, and we get to invite them into our fold. And
yeah, I think at the same time of Guys Cook Night, so you mentioned Kyle. Kyle. I remember it really being you, Kyle, and me. I had this amazing mansion that I got to live in.
Amazing. Like mountain chateau.
So, yeah.
Grand views. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I had friends who were still at AP who would come to visit, and they would tell me, Amy, I don't know that you'll ever live in a house this nice. It was so nice. So it was like a huge two-story house. It was all by myself, like living room that had just glass windows that overlooked the other side of the canyon, so the mountains. So when it snowed, it was just so beautiful,
amazing.
So wonderful.
Like this grand fireplace, like huge fireplace in the living room, so you could like sit on a couch next to this big crackling fire and just look at snow falling across like a mountain. It's so epic.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was really wonderful. Yeah. So because they lived Brian time lived in like small little houses.
But I fit a little bigger than this couch.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, I was given this like probably one of the best places on Forest Home property to live in all by myself. Brian and Kyle would come over, and there was the patio outside that we would just sit on and like look at the stars and talk. And so I remember also that was a very formational time too, of just having time together to get to know each other. And I remember really thinking it was like childhood friends, like
totally
just our times together. And I do think of it as me, you, and Kyle. Like, yeah. So Guys Cook Night, and then it was called the Kramer House. So the Kramer House as well, being pretty formational in our time.
Yeah. Oh, such good memories. What ended up happening, so Kyle had a girlfriend, and but she didn't live up at camp, so she lived further away, and so that's why the three of us were like the three amigos and would hang out a lot. And then on Valentine's Day, I think was a real turning point for our friendship. Kyle and Joy were going to go off-roading. Joy is his wife now, which is also pretty awesome. They were going to go off-roading for Valentine's Day, go explore. And Kyle, I had this little Suzuki Samurai, which is like little tiny death trap. Good for going like below 40 miles an hour, at least if you're going to be comfortable in any way. You can go faster than that, but it's pretty miserable. For long trips, I loved this little thing. This little car was the best. So Kyle was like, how about you come with me? I was like, all right. So it was like, Amy, how about we go with Kyle and Joy? And it just made sense. Like, how about we'll drive in the Samurai? That way Kyle and Joy, it's their date. They're having this date. We're just tagging along as friends. And if we go in my car, then if they want to go do whatever they want to do on their date time, that's fine. And we're not encroaching. And so that's what we did. And so we just had a good time. And Amy had told me either that day or whenever it was we made the plan, she was like, yes, I can go, but I have a date that night. The Valentine's Day date. So I need to be back at a certain time to get ready and be able to go to this date. And so I just had that in my mind, and also like in my mind in terms of we have this time to get back for, but also in my mind in terms of like, she's got a date. Like, okay. Like, like we're friends. We're just going on this thing. But it was a wonderful day. It was a lot of fun in this like kind of annoying vehicle. I still love it. Oh, it's so dear to me.
I know.
I sold it so we could get married. It's worth it. So I just was intentional to make sure you got back for your date, and that thankfully was really meaningful to you.
Yeah. So there was a guy at APU who we had gone on a few dates right after I graduated. And so I graduated in December. This was February. We were going on a date that night. And so I still remember thinking of it as friends. But after spending that day together with Brian, and he was so considerate, he was like checking the time and would tell Kyle and Joy like, oh, okay, well, you guys go on ahead, but I think we're going to only have this much time because you probably need time to get ready. I don't know. I just remember there being like a lot of consideration. And I just thought, wow, that's like, it really stuck out to me as being very selfless, because we were having a lot of fun. He was having a lot of fun. And to like put me ahead of like his own desire to maybe keep going and keep playing and keep having fun with friends, was really sweet. And it was, it was really, really sweet. So I went on that date that night, and I really was struck with how I felt this wonderful friendship with Brian, and I really just wanted to keep being with him. I had left spending the day with him to go somewhere else, and I just want to be back and hang out with Brian. So I left that date early, and we finished dinner, and I left that date early, and I just had on my mind, I just want to keep hanging out with Brian. And so I think that actually when I drove back up the mountain, I think that we did hang out after. And then it was the next time that I went to APU, and I told the guy that I don't want to date anymore. We were just going on dates. We weren't like boyfriend, girlfriend, but I just told him, I don't want to continue this, because I had really seen the difference of, he was great, but Brian was really the person I wanted to spend time with.
I think for both of us, from that point forward, for a time, there was a season then after that where we were undefined, but spending a lot of time together. And still with Kyle, spending a lot of time, but then also just the two of us spending a lot of time, like sometimes like just sitting after work in Kramer house on a couch with this like incredible view. And she had a record player in there with all these old random records. And so we just put random records on and just sit and listen and talk. We'd go on walks. One of the great things too about being up at camp was, it's not like we had TV or internet or any of that stuff at that time.
I didn't even have cell phone service.
Yeah, we didn't even have cell phone service. So it would be like what would we do is we would go on walks. We'd talk. We'd engage with one another, not just like be entertained together. We'd entertain each other and build friendship. And on those walks and in a lot of those conversations, on that front end, and then later on as well, like in friendship, we talked a lot about relationships. We kind of debriefed like what we thought about past relationships we had, some of the things that we were like, I don't know how that went and why I felt that way. And I think there was something wonderful about our like friendship, that we could talk about relationships in such a neutral way without it being like an emotionally charged for the other person to hear about our thoughts on a relationship. Like we knew we enjoyed being around each other. And that was about it. Like, it was like, I enjoy being around you, and similar, like you enjoy being around me, if I remember correctly. That was sort of, it just made it easy to talk about foundational relationship things and concepts. And I think that just only tied us closer together in the way that like, it's like, wow, I guess we align on a lot of things, and we care about the same things, and we've had some of the same questions, and we've navigated some of the similar difficulties along the way and questioned those things. And we didn't have answers for all of those things. And it was just bonding. Yeah. One thing that did happen though, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So one thing that did happen along the way though, and this is something that like, I think we're thankful that we in our in our friendship, we actually had like an interrupt moment. We've had a couple. We'll get to that, but I'm thankful for the interrupt moment, because during that time there was ambiguity about us. Like other people would ask, what's the deal? You're hanging out. Oh, we're just friends. We're just friends. But then
Here, can I say something about it? I remember being in a meeting, and so Michael White was there, who was my boss, who was the one who wanted us to get together. And it was kind of a large meeting, and there was a girl there who kept saying, Brian, I saw you driving through in your Samurai with a girl in your seat. Who was that? I saw you driving. And you were like, it was probably Amy. And she was like, I saw you with a girl. And you were like, it was probably Amy. And it was like still this, like, we're friends, but there were so many questions about, and then it was like, oh, it was Amy. Okay. And like this, like, oh, well, I just brought that up in this whole meeting. So yeah, we definitely got asked, and
A lot.
Yeah, in a variety of ways.
Yes. And we both like pretty strongly maintained externally, like,
Yeah.
she's just a friend. He's just a friend. But we actually had kissed at one point before there was definition. We had like, there was some in terms of definition of our relationship, there were some things we had done physically in terms of kissing or even like holding hands or things where it was like, this is getting blurry. But we didn't clarify that. And that, I'm glad that we actually had an interrupt moment in our relationship to sort of reset that. And we can kind of get into that. But like, it did reset, and we were able to start in a better way again, to where we actually were much more intentional about letting that aspect of our relationship develop in a healthy, safe way.
Yeah. So talking about it now, we look back and we've talked about it. And you had said to me one time, well, we were sitting in a house, or we would go on these hikes that were like in the mountains, in the woods,
Epic.
Beautiful, like
amazing,
snow coming
epic.
down. Like there was one time we went up the creek to a waterfall, and it was so cold, and we both just got like sprayed by the mist, and it was like so cold, but just, excuse me, just really bonding moments. And then to come back to this like wonderful house with a crackling fire.
We're cold and we're like
cold.
blankets.
Yeah, record player. And it's like, how could I not just like reach over and hold your hand?
Fool.
So as he said, the interrupt was really, really good because actually the physical part, like we had this amazing friendship, so natural, good. And I know that for me, like the physical piece did change it of like questions, and it did kind of take away this like really wonderful, just at peace, at ease connection we had. And so this was the spring, and as summer comes on at camp, it gets so busy. So we had different jobs. He was recreation, which is full on summer. For me, I was a retreat coordinator. So actually my busy season was the off season. So I was hosting the groups and retreats that would come up on the weekends and midweek. And then through the summer, most of the camp centers were overtaken by programmed events, which was more like totally his world. And then for me, I just had a much lighter load. So as I was kind of coming out in my job of more of the full season, he was really stepping into where it ramped up. So he was really working a lot to get the recreation activities ready, cleaned up, the kayaks, the zip lines, and getting ready to welcome a huge group of summer staff employees who were all young adults. So he got really busy. So in the midst of, we've had this wonderful bonding time for months,
hanging out multiple days a week,
having wonderful conversations that were just good for both of us personally. And then adding, like we said, the holding hands and adding that in, and then this, like, he's really busy and we're not seeing each other as much.
It was like we're hanging out all the time to like, I haven't seen you for 3 weeks.
Yes.
Which we lived and worked within like yards of each other, like not even a mile. Like it's like under a mile, but like just so busy.
Yeah. So we just didn't really see each other as much. And so he was going on a mission trip to Brazil, and I think you came over to my house to say like, I'm going to this, mission trip to Brazil. I just remember you leaving, and I had this, like, I haven't seen you much. You're going to Brazil, and then it's summer, like really busy. And so I don't know if this is still a thing, but back in 2011, or at least before that, when I was in college, we had the DTR, which is define the relationship. And I really had it on my heart of, I think before he goes to Brazil, I'd really like to have define the relationship. And so you had left, and I remember no cell service. I used the landline phone and called your phone. And then I just remember, I thought we would talk on the phone, but I think you came back, and then we talked in person. And I said, I just said, I'd really like to talk about our relationship and like where we're at, where we've been, where like we've been. I just haven't seen you much, and I just want to check in. I don't really remember exactly if that's what I said.
I think
don't know.
something.
But it was basically like a let's define this because there's questions, and so
yeah.
Brian's response.
So I remember this conversation as we explain it won't sound like what it in retrospect it was. In retrospect, it was the pivotal conversation in us becoming Amy and Brian Williams. But that's not how the conversation ended. And even I remember you calling and be like, we need to talk. Like, can you come over? And I was like, okay, I'll just come over. And I remember driving over thinking, uh-oh, like, because we hadn't seen each other. I knew there was this, like, I also felt this like uneasiness, and this was something that was so good and so enjoyable, our friendship. But then there being like, but there is this ambiguity and this weirdness, and we hadn't seen each other. I just knew, like, I also knew we needed to talk about this, but I don't want to like, and I'm leaving at like 3 a.m. to go to Brazil for 4 days and fly right back. And it was like a very, anyway, that was the selfish Brian. But went over, and I remember you being so straightforward and kind, but straightforward, and of like, this is where I'm at. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I need to know. Like, where are we? What is going on here? And I need this and you just talked about like how you'd been praying. You're like, I was just praying, and it was just like, I need clarity, Lord. And it was like, I need to just ask for clarity. And I just remember the like, I don't know how else to say it other than emotional stability with which you went about it, which that's something that through all of our friendship, like I was so appreciative of. And so that's how the conversation started. And we talked through, I don't remember exactly how we got to all the things we got to, but I remember clearly some of the key points. I communicated in some way that, and these are the words I used because I couldn't think of other words. I was like, when I think about you, I'm not Twitter-pated. like I'm not giddy. Like I really enjoy being around you. I can communicate with you so well. I really appreciate all the things we do, but I got to be honest, I don't feel giddy when I think about you. And in past relationships, in past even non-relationships, just girls I was interested in, I had that. And I don't know if I need that. Is that needed? I wasn't sure. And so that's just what I that was what I communicated was, when I think of you, I'm not giddy, and I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if I need that. I think I might need that, but I'm not sure. And your response was similar.
Yeah. My response was similar. I felt the same way. There was, like, as I've talked a lot about, there was a definite draw, like soul, emotional, but I also didn't have the same like physical, like, oh, I'm so attracted to you. Or I think like, I think that there's exactly like he said, guys I dated before, or just like, there's a like physical attraction that it wasn't like a, like, oh, the Twitter page is a good word for it. And what's interesting is that I remember being at church when I was in high school, and there was the Friesens. They were part of our church, and Paul and Virginia were on stage, and Paul said, like, to the whole church, something about, I don't remember the exact words, but it was like, I was not attracted to my wife. And at the time I remember thinking, how can she be standing up there and hearing this? Like, and how can he be saying this? And because I thought that was like the crucial part of a relationship. And so I remember hearing that and that really impacting me of, oh, I really like this couple and I think they're wonderful and they've been married so long and they give so much advice, but this is like a really big piece. And they're up here he's saying, I'm not attracted to I wasn't attracted to my wife. And then he's talked about how like that grew and that built, and but it was still really hard for me to get over. So then to be in this relationship and to like hear that from Brian, but then also for me to recognize, I feel that same way. Like I feel that same way actually. And like, is that a component that we need? Like, is that a piece that maybe like what he shared, the Friesens, will grow over time in that way? Or, and so we both really like agreed. We were both on a very similar same page of that, where that piece was just, we didn't have the butterflies in the stomach.
Yeah.
And,
we knew we enjoyed being around one another. We knew it was peaceful. I think that's maybe one of the key words. It was peaceful. It was easy to be around one another, but it wasn't like the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, is that a problem?
We had a lot of like shared experiences that were exciting, but in terms of just our like that, it was different.
And that, as we kind of went through that conversation, we just had these questions. We just had this question of, do we need that? We both had that question. Do we need it? And so I thought it would be best to just give clarity, and to resolve clarity would be better than ambiguity. And so also that's what you'd asked for.
That's what I'd asked for. Yeah, I remember really wanting that.
I just was like, after we'd been talking through these different questions and having these, I just was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what we're doing. And I just said very clearly and very point blankly, I am not going to pursue you. And you said, okay, thank you. And that was sort of the end of the conversation. It was just that clarity of, I'm not going to pursue you.
And I had so much peace. Like, to hear the words like from someone, I would expect myself to be like, oh, I'm kind of hurt, but I really had so much peace. I felt like, great. Like, I really did feel like you're not going to pursue me. Okay, great.
And to me, I remember driving home after that and just being like, what just happened? Like, this is possible? Like how could I have just told this woman, I'm not going to pursue you? How could I have just had this whole conversation with her where we had such clarity, where we were able to talk so freely and not be, either one of us, be wrecked by it or be emotionally tied into these things, but to be in a place of like, and it really was faith. It was a place of faith and security, like of just like, okay, like both of us were in a place of, we enjoy one another and we don't know what's needed, but we know we have clarity about just this next season. And I don't think we voiced it, but I know I had in my mind, like, this is I'm not going to pursue you and we'll see what happens. Like, but at least we have clarity for now. And I assume it was similar for you.
Actually, I thought he's not going to pursue me, so I moved on. I moved on. He was really busy in the summer, and I wasn't as much, so I still had other like friends from AP I got together with. I really honestly just moved on.
It ended up being like the best thing that could have happened, and even that conversation really was a turning point for me. I don't think it had fully clarity right away, but like in time over the course of summer, it just was like, that's the sort of person I want to be with. Someone who I can have those sorts of conversations with, where we get somewhere, where we care for one another, where we navigate these difficult things well. And I don't know if I need to be giddy about her. I don't know if I need that, but I do know that being able to communicate like that, that's important. That's valuable. And so over the course of summer, we would still hang out, but summer was really busy. So we'd hang out kind of intermittently here and there. I kind of started to pursue her actually a little bit, but like not in like, I just pursued getting time with her was all. It'd just be like intentional to be like, hey, want to go on a walk tonight? Like, and then a couple weeks later be like, hey, a bunch of us are going to go do this. You want to come? And like, just intentional to include her, and just have time with her. And then even over the course of those things, it was like, yeah, I don't know what's needed. I don't know like what will come of this, but I know that there's good here and I want that good. And I want to see what comes of that good. And so at the end of summer, we were sitting on the porch of the White's house. And
so I was living. So Kyle, who we mentioned earlier, I was living at his family's house, who lived up there. So I was living there. So throughout the summer, so I had to move out of the really wonderful mansion because they had to put campers in there. So I moved out of there, and then I was living at Kyle White's house with his family,
which was wonderful too. Angie White, which is such a dream.
Stan,
like important people for us, but. Angie just caring for us too in good motherly ways. But I remember sat down on the porch and we had another define the relationship sort of. I initiated this time and just let her know and kind of all that stuff. Like, I don't know if we need to be giddy about one another, but I know that our relationship is good. Like how we interact. What we care about, the fact that we can communicate with one another and that we value and long for the same things, that is good. And so I would like to pursue you and see if giddiness grows or if giddiness is even needed at all. And you said no, which was good. And a part of that changing pattern of kind of how our relationship first started, or our like romantic-ish end of relationship, like in terms of the physical side, where it was, we just drifted into it. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't measured or careful in any way. And this was much more careful. So I don't know if you want to share about that for your side of what that experience was like.
Yeah. I don't remember the timing of that conversation exactly, but I think it did come after. I remember through the summer, I was visiting another camp, and while I was away, I got a text message from you, or a couple text messages from you that really made me think, like, he's sending me these messages. And it felt like, like just starting to feel that ambiguity sort of like, okay, I think he's pursuing me, but he said he wasn't going to pursue me. And then coming back from that camp and finding like a note at my door. And I think you even just coming over, I remember thinking that and not sure how I felt about it because it was like taking him at his word meant he's not pursuing me. He's not going to pursue me, but then he's pursuing me. So I remember just feeling a little unsure. So I think that might have happened before the conversation. And then when you brought up the conversation, I think that's why I said no, because I was open to the relationship but I was not open to, I think probably honestly looking back, like a physical component, because later on when he did ask to be my girlfriend, am I skipping ahead too much?
Oh, no.
Okay. So I think that's why I said no, is because I felt really at peace about like, okay, we can keep having this friendship. And if you're going to choose to pursue me, like you can choose to pursue me, but I'm not at a place to say like yes and to enter into anything physical. And so we continued to just hang out, and
I still was really intentional because after that point too, I felt like, okay, I've made it clear. I want to pursue her. I'm going to be intentional to keep making that clear.
Yeah, like you asked me to come with you as your date to like the summer staff banquet. And that's not something I would have gone to because I wasn't on the program part of things, but I went with him because as his date. So there were still things where I knew there was something, but so it was the end of summer. And then I think it was in October.
Yeah, end of October.
End of October, we were with a big group of friends in Big Bear. Was that the lake trip? And we rode. Yeah. Okay, so we were in Big Bear.
Oh, yeah. Alpine slide.
Yeah.
So fun. So fun.
Yeah, so we were hanging out in Big Bear, and then we were on this bridge at sunset. Am I getting that right? I think.
I don't even.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we were on a bridge.
You're picturing this is great. Sounds beautiful.
At Big Bear. And I think you asked me to be your girlfriend, and I said yes. And then you said, "Can I kiss you?" And I said no.
And I was pumped. Honestly, I was pumped. Every step along the way of like even being like, I would like to pursue you, and you being like, I'm not on board with that, but I want to still be your friend and still hang out together. It just was so, it was peaceful. It's like, it was peace for me. It was like, okay, wonderful. Like, it was like this release of like, okay, I can just continue to get to know you and be with you and spend time with you and show you I care for you and get to explore. Like, it was I'm curious about what could come of this. It wasn't absolutely, she's the one. Like, it was I don't know, but this is worth exploring. And so it was just like, I felt like you holding those boundaries actually made it easier for me as well to be at peace about it and not have there be anything weird or clouded about it. Just to be like, oh, okay, great. Well, we'll just keep hanging out then.
Yeah.
Like, and it was so good.
Yeah. And I think because Big Bear was about an hour away from Forest Falls where we lived and worked. And so on the way back, I remember being in the car and talking about that and talking about, I don't remember how it came up. Maybe I asked, I don't know, but I just remember you saying, no, I'm really glad you said no. Like, kissing, and I was like, great. Okay, wonderful. Like, we both had and I remember that being, again, so affirming of like, okay, that we can be in alignment and so that was really cool. And I think that looking back now, talking about this thought didn't come till later. I think when we were engaged, I remember road trips though. So looking back, I can see it then too, of thinking, wow, God, you must really love this man because the way you're leading me to have this in this relationship, or the way that you're like bringing up things in my heart to bring to him or to share to work. I remember having the thought like, God, you must really love this man. And then realizing, God, you must really love me. Like, you must really love us. And I remember that thought coming later, but talking about these things, like looking back, I can see that was there the whole, like the whole time, of like God pulling us away from things that weren't like good for our relationship, or pulling us away from things and bringing us and like rewriting things for us, and like rewriting like thoughts we had about relationships or about, I guess just relationships. So yeah, I think that's that looking back now, I can see how that was evident there, even if I didn't realize it at the time. So yeah. So that's how we became girlfriend, boyfriend.
And then I officially took her on a date. And it was like, this time I'm going to do it real. Like, nothing's going to be ambiguous. We'll still go on hikes. We'll still do all that stuff. But it was like, I'm going to take her on a date, like a real date. And we went to Big Bear again, and we went to that Italian restaurant.
Oh, yes. Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just, from there sort of on, we just dated, I guess. We just hung out and were intentional, and this time there's nothing hidden. It'd be clear. It's my girlfriend Amy. Like, it's my boyfriend Brian. People would ask, and we'd be, people knew there was no ambiguity. So after we were dating and stuff, it was kind of cruising along and enjoying one another. That relationship really continuing to build. I guess it's not like it all of a sudden went on this exponential curve. It just was building, I guess, along the way. And that kind of fit in with something that we had talked about somewhere along the way, about being emotionally measured in our relationships. We had talked about relationships a lot along the way, from even when we were first just friends. We had talked about. I'm
sorry, I just remembered something that I think we should bring up.
What's that?
So, you said that there wasn't ambiguity, that it was like, you're my boyfriend, I'm your girlfriend. But actually there was still a little ambiguity with my parents. So I forgot about
that.
So you came with me on a trip up north. I think we were in Oregon or Washington. It was probably to visit my brother. Yeah. Okay, so my parents live in Northern California. My brother was living in Washington at the time. So you came with me on a trip up there. And actually at that trip, we did not tell my parents that we were dating. And I had some fear from, my mom and I are really close, but I had some past in a relationship that I had where my mom and our relationship got really tense from that dating relationship. And so I had some fear of sharing that with my mom because of
sharing
past,
that we were dating.
Sharing that we were dating. And so I really wanted it to be in the right way and in the right manner. And so you came on the trip, and I just wanted my parents to have some time with Brian before this is my boyfriend. And I'm sure they thought things. I don't remember, but I'm sure.
They had to have.
Yeah, I'm sure they knew or thought things. But I actually ended up writing a letter to my mom and telling her, Mom, I really care about our relationship. I really want this to be good. I care about Brian, and we are dating. Brian is my boyfriend. And so I don't remember. I mean, I'm saying that I don't remember exactly the contents of the letter, but that was like the general gist of it, was writing her a letter to let her know, because I really wanted to be in a dating relationship and have the relationship with my mom still really good and still really strong. And so I wasn't really sure how to do that. But I just remember wanting to try in a way that would be honoring to this relationship and honoring to my mom. And I still don't know if that was like the right way to go about it. I don't know, but that was the only ambiguity until I wrote the letter and shared with her. So I just remembered that.
I think that's a good thing to share. I do remember that being confusing and hard for me because I didn't understand the complexity of the relationship you'd had in the past with your mom, and how I remember that just being hard for me to understand. It's like, but I'm your boy. Like, aren't they going to know? Like, I don't get this. But just needing to trust you. I do remember that trip being a little weird too. And like, like being like, we're definitely boyfriend and girlfriend.
I mean, it's probably obvious.
Why else would I fly to Tacoma with your family? But that process.
Well, and I don't know. I don't think I said like, oh, he's not my boyfriend. I think that it was just we've been friends. Like, I think they knew we were friends, that like, I maybe even said like,
I'd met your dad before.
Oh yeah. So I think it was kind of we hang out a lot and we've been friends, and I don't know. I don't remember, but I know that I didn't lie about it, but I wasn't telling the whole truth. So until I wrote the letter.
And I remember that being a relief when the letter was written.
Yeah. And I remember I wanted to share, but it took me time. It took me time to feel like, because I was nervous about it.
And thankfully that went all right.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah.
I think it was, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was my parents probably like, oh yeah, we knew. Or I don't know, something, like
probably
something, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's important, especially for some stuff that comes.
Sorry for interrupting your gear analogy.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Go ahead.
So we had talked about being emotionally measured, because we'd seen in other relationships that some of our friends had. We'd seen, not just people we had known, but like over the years as we talked about relationships and why do relationships get so crazy? Why is it so hard when people break up? Why is it that we talked about all those things. And then we'd also talked about in our own past dating experiences, why did that get so messy? What was it that had me so tied up about that? Why? We talked through that, and a lot of it we kept coming back to just that being emotionally measured and having your emotional connection to the person you're with be equivalent to the commitment you actually have in the relationship. That those need to be aligned, and it's when they get misaligned that things get really messy. When your emotional commitment and ties to that person, that relationship, are further than the actual reality of how well you know that person and how connected you are and the covenant and commitment you have to one another. And that's when things start to get really messy and get really hard. And we surmised that like, if we do a better job of touching base with one another, where are we at? Like even the clarity of like, will you be my girlfriend? No. Okay. All right. Then I'm not emotionally going to be connected to you as though you are my girlfriend, because you're not. And that those little things along the way, I think, made it easier for us to actually then continue to have relationship, because we were able to stay in a place where it was good. Like even when I was pursuing her over summer, like there wasn't an emotional tie behind that pursuit. There was a recognition and understanding of, I'm pursuing her, but she's not mine. Like we're not committed to one another. I'd like to spend more time with her, but I don't expect her to. I don't expect her to do anything outside of what a friend would do or be and how she would relate or respond to me, and vice versa. And that pattern of communication between the two of us, and like work to like keep ourselves emotionally at the same state of what our relationship was actually at, I think really helped us thrive in it. And also that's what helped us get through being like, no, we're not a thing, to we're a thing, to no, we're not. Like it helped us navigate that so much because, I don't know, we were able to be emotionally stable, and that security, my emotional security wasn't in you. It was still in the Lord. And the same was true for you. And so,
very much so.
God was so faithful to us through that, but that doesn't mean we did it perfectly. And I think that really brings us to when you went to Tennessee.
Yeah. So after the following summer, I decided to leave Forest Home and go to a discipleship training program I had been part of in college. I spent one summer in college. It's partnered with Young Life. It's called Discipleship Focus. So living in Tennessee, I had lived in Tennessee for a summer in college, and there was a fall program with the intention, I think, of a gap year, but it's really open. And so even though I had been out of college already, I really felt it on my heart that it was something that I wanted to do, something that would be really good for me and my relationship with the Lord. And so that summer I shared with Brian, so now we're in 2012, I shared with Brian that I had applied to this program in Tennessee and that I was thinking about moving out there for the fall. And I don't remember all the details, but I remember it being a pretty pivotal place in our relationship of choices. And I remember at times Brian expressing hesitation about me going, hesitation about a long distance relationship, and just being generally unsure about the decision.
So like I said, those emotional ties being measured appropriately. This is a time when I hadn't, when like I thought I was, we're all proud, and maybe we aren't all. I am. I'm proud and self-righteous at times and thinking, oh no, I'm good. I've got this under wraps. I know what's good and I operate according to it. But I didn't in this time. And Amy sharing about going to Tennessee, like I was so excited for her and so blessed to be like, oh, this woman, like she loves God. She loves God and is willing to give up this dream full-time job that she has because she felt the Lord prompting her to something different. She was willing to respond to that call of God to go do something different, to give up like what it'd be. That makes no practical sense to give that up. But it's like, but if God's calling me, it makes all the sense. That to me was like a huge blessing. It's like, yes, this woman. And so, but I kept vacillating between like, oh, this is so wonderful. What a wonderful woman. But also don't leave me. Like, don't leave me for months. And I had done a discipleship program that had similarities. And I had known how I came back different from that experience. And that experience was so pivotal for me, and it shaped who I was. And I was afraid that Amy would go and do this, and she would be shaped by God in a way and have this experience that I was not a part of and could not relate to her on, and that would be a wedge between us. I was afraid of that. I was afraid of that. And so I went from like an open-handed person with Amy and with our relationship, and this is sort of the analogy. It's okay if I tell?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where like as we went through our relationship, we did a pretty good job, I think, of being open-handed, of being like, okay, Lord, you've put Amy in my life. It's as if you've put her in my hand. And I'm so thankful, Lord. This is so good. Thank you so much for putting Amy here. But I'm going to remain open-handed. And so long as she's here, I'm so grateful. And I'm going to delight in her. I'm going to delight in what you've given. And thank you, Lord, and praise you because of it. But if you, Lord, choose to take it out, I'm going to trust you that you know what you're doing. And you're going to put something else there that is good or even better. Not just for me, but for her as well. And that, to be open-handed. And when things get really ugly, especially in relationships, is when people start to close their hands around the other person and say, no, they're mine. They're mine. No, Lord, don't take them from me. No. And that's when it starts to get messy. And that doesn't help the relationship. And that's when breakups look really bad. And I think that was something that when we had our earlier on, this DTR, we both were very this, and we were able to be this. And that made it so our breakup was actually beautiful. It was actually good to where we could walk away from one another, hopeful for ourselves and hopeful for the other person, because we both trusted the Lord. Lord, whatever you intend to put in this hand, whatever you intend to put in her hand will be good, maybe even better. Not just for me, but you'll have something better for her than me. I trust you, whatever it would be. And thankfully, the Lord drew us back to putting the other one in there. But during this Tennessee, when this was coming about, I was struggling with, but no, Lord. Ugh. But and it was it ultimately all came down to a matter of trusting the Lord. And I guess I can get to where it ended, but I think you should maybe talk about during that time of me closing my hand, what were the thoughts that were going on in your head?
Yeah. So the thoughts that were going on in my head is I felt that it was similar to places I'd been before. And I remember at APU sitting down with one of my mentors after I had ended a relationship and telling him okay, this has happened twice now. Is this going to keep happening where there's I feel a call, or I feel something different. And then I end the relationship because of that, and talking to him about that. And so this felt actually really similar of, okay, it's happening again. I feel this call. I feel that this is something that I should do. And it seems like it might be changing this relationship. It was changing our relationship. It was changing the way we interact. It was changing our relationship. And so just feeling my thoughts and my feelings were just again of, I feel like this is something that I should do and I'm called into. There had been multiple confirmations. Michael White, who we've mentioned, he had left Forest Home recently, right before I chose to, and he had told me, sometimes he had told me about a push and a pull. Sometimes you have a pull, but sometimes there's not a push. Sometimes there's a push, but you don't have a pull. And so at the time there were I was seeing a pull and a push, a push for me to grow out of the role that I had been in. I didn't know what was going to be next, but I felt a push and I was seeing pulls. I was seeing a pull. And so there were just multiple affirmations for me that really felt that I saw that I should step into. So the thoughts in my head were, okay, I'm following this, but I'm also seeing change here, and I don't know what that change is going to lead to. Is this going to look like in the past where, okay, it's the end of a relationship, or will it look different? Will it be able to share a different story, tell a different future. And that was unknown. I didn't know.
And I remember one of the things that's wonderful is that even during that time, I remember you were so steadfast, and you even shared at one point with me, you're like, I need to be faithful to the Lord over you. And I remember that being hard to hear, which was like, also, I knew I was struggling to hear that. And that ate me up because I'm like, that's good. Like, it's good. But I remember it being like, I was ashamed of myself. Like, why? That's so good. I want her to want the Lord more than me, but I don't trust him because I want her. And yeah, I don't know why I'm crying, but I guess it was just good and meaningful. And I think why I'm crying is I know you prayed so much for my heart. I know you prayed so much for my hurt during that time. And God was faithful to her prayers, and that is a pattern that has continued.
I think it relates to now and like things that we go through now in marriage, and it's really similar.
Is you praying for my heart, leaning in and knowing that the Lord wants what's best for me, and that the Lord has good plans, and if only my heart would open to it, that I would see it. And you've served me so faithfully with your faith and prayer to God. Thank you.
I love you. I love the man that you are.
Thank you. I love you too. I think that's something I love so much about you, and I'm so grateful for. So grateful for that you continue to hope, not necessarily in me, but in the Lord and what he intends for me. Oh, it's so good. Thank you. Anyway, Tennessee. During that time, I think the big shift for me, and I'm thankful, so thankful, prayers, and just God being someone who pursues us, and God continuing to put it on my heart as I prayed of like making it clear, like, Brian, open your hand, man. Open your hand. You're choking out this thing you love, and I love it for you to stop choking it out and trust me. And a turning point was when God it was just like he spoke it quite clearly. Like, I have good plans for her, and I have good plans for you, Brian. And that was such a huge turning point to be like, okay, Lord, like I believed he was going to do good and amazing things in her there. I just had this like, it's going to be awesome. And I'm not going to be a part of it, and I'm going to miss out on it. And we're not going to bond over that. But it being like, God's like, I am with you too, right where you are. I am with you, and I have plans and intentions for you in this season as well. Don't miss them, Brian. Don't miss them. And that was the shift. That was the whole shift of them being like, okay, Lord, and being able to open up to recognize, like, if I just keep clinging to Amy while she's way over in Tennessee, I'm going to miss out on all that God intended for me right where I was. And that would be a tragedy. That would be unfortunate. And I want that over Amy. I want to have what God intends. I want him over having Amy. And that release, I think, was a huge relief to you, and a relief to our relationship. It released a burden, but also that was like, we've talked about it a lot. That ended up being one of my favorite seasons of all the years I lived at Forest Home. Like, that season of community and of the people that were there, and it was beautiful and special and just so unique. And I would have missed out on it had I not opened my hand and trusted the Lord with myself and with her.
And that's really cool looking back, because typically the off season is like really quiet. You have a few young adults, like maybe, And looking back now, like where I was going was so full of community, and it would feel like, well, you're going to have the same thing, but God definitely provided. Like he provided so much community for Brian. And so we both, like, I think it was really partnered in what we both, I mean, it was separate, but we both had really similar experiences. So yeah, I think that another part was, in order to get out to Tennessee, we took a road trip, and
that was so fun. That was the best.
Yeah, I think we took, I don't remember how many days, but
4 or 5 days.
Yeah,
we stayed with people from camp that we knew from camp,
family,
all along the way. So like every night we'd get to a new person's house and get to like. It was awesome.
Yeah. So we had like someone from camp who'd moved away to Utah. So that was our first stop. So we planned our stops like based on, that was from someone from camp. Then we had Brian's family. Then we had
Colorado,
another person
Kansas
from camp.
City.
And then we had my family in Ohio. And then we went down to Tennessee. So it was really cool how it worked out. But that road trip was also just really so beneficial for us, and really forming on that road trip. We talked about a variety of things. We talked about some experiences he had in Uganda and spiritual things. We talked about me just bringing forth like, okay, so this is how this has come about now with like a call, but like in marriage, what would that look like? Like, this is, we're dating. So yeah, I can move to Tennessee. Like we can be separate for this, but so it was bringing forth like, this is something I've questioned, like, what would that look like in marriage? Like, would God give us both that same call, that same direction?
Or would it be conflict?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we had just experienced. What if God is calling one person in the marriage to something and the other person is close-handed about it? What? Like,
yeah. So we
want that.
We obviously on the road trip, we had a lot of time for conversation. So we had music, but then we also just had some really great conversations on the way to Tennessee.
And just to reflect on that again, I think having gotten back to the place of being open-handed, even as we talked about marriage in those ways, we often talked about it in a third-party way, not in a us way. So, and I think that was really great. We did that a lot over the time, to where it wasn't, how many kids do you want? Because I want this many.
Right.
It was, what do you think about kids in general? And how do you see, like, it wasn't about us. It was about marriage and about life and what God intends and what God is calling to. And I don't know how to frame that in a different way other than like, we were able to talk about it that in a way that didn't put a huge weight on, we're talking about marriage. Oh my. It was like, yeah, we're talking about marriage because that's what, like, we both eventually want to be married, maybe to one another. I don't know, but we're talking about marriage because we both want to be there one day. And what can we learn about it? What can I learn from you about marriage? What can you learn from me? What can this processing through it set us up better for the future, whether if it's with one another or with others? Yeah. I think that's another thing that really stood out. I think God had made it clear from the beginning, and I had shared this at one point, and we had talked about it, was we both want to be better off for having been in this relationship, whether it's us being together or us not being together. It was like, I want you to be better off for having been in this relationship with me. And I hope that I'm better off after having been in this relationship with you. Yeah. And maybe it'll lead to marriage. If not, we'll be better off. And thankfully it led to marriage. Which I think that, so after that road trip, I had always wondered, like, when will you know? How do you know that this is the one you want to marry? And after that road trip, I was like, we both were like, wow, I really like you. Like, I really love you. I really love this person. But I still wasn't like, I still had the questions of like, is this the one I should marry? I don't know. Like, how do I know? That's a huge decision. And I had some fears about marriage. I had some fears about marriage, about what I didn't want marriage in my life to become. And so I took it very seriously of like, wow, this is a huge decision. And one day, Matt Arnold, which maybe some of you guys know Matt Arnold, who had been a friend for a long time, like my high school counselor in high school ministry. And one day I don't think I'd seen him for a long time. I don't know. He was over at my parents' house. I was over there, and we were talking, catching up. And I was telling him about this girl I'm dating. And as we were talking about it, if I can remember the words, how he said it, but he just listened to me talk about her and about this road trip we just went on and things I'm thinking and what I care about and why I value it. And he's like, it sounds like you want to marry her. And that was just this like, I do. You're right. I want to marry her. Like it was like he gave me permission to want that. It's like to say it and just to be like, yep, I want to marry her. And that was this like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to marry her. And so I set out on then a process of being like, I'm going to surprise her with an engagement. I'm quite sentimental and like doing surprises and all these things. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to like fly out to Tennessee and I'm going to surprise her and I'm going to get all her friends in Tennessee to help me out. And they did, like with ring sizes, help them figure all that out, all this stuff, very covert. And was starting to get this stuff sorted out. Early on in that process, I had sent an email to her dad. I got asked for the hand in marriage. And so sent an email saying, hey, I'd like to talk with you. The response, Amy's dad is a wonderful man. He's very gentle and kind and humble. And so his response caught me off guard. Not that his response wasn't gentle and kind and humble. It just wasn't what I expected. And it was, I assume, these aren't the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, I believe this is to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage, and I don't want to talk about that right now. Or something along those lines. And I remember being like, what in the world? Like, what do I do now? And that led to a series of back and forths and eventual phone calls and just a bunch of stuff. Kind of a long season, actually. I don't know how long it was. I think maybe a month or more before I talked to you about it, where I had this whole plan in mind. I had a plan. I wanted to execute it. And this was the only thing in the way. Like, this is good. Like, we're good. Like, this is a good thing. Like, well, why is this here? I didn't understand. I was frustrated. I was angry. And I'm so, so thankful for people in my life. There were people to come alongside me and to help me and to coach me in that. And this one man, Paul Lockenfora, thank you, Paul, who worked at Forest Home. And I had known Paul, had interacted with Paul, was friends with Paul, but he's older than me. And I don't know what it was about that season. I don't remember exactly that brought us together in a closer way, but we were interacting more at work and just came about in conversation. When people engage with people, my friends, and God will use you in ways you may not expect. You don't just have to talk about trivial things. Ask him questions. And I think that's what Paul did, is he just would ask me questions about my life and about things and about Amy. He knew Amy, loved Amy. And so I invited Paul into the reality of, I'm wanting to marry her, but this is the email I got. And Paul was my rock through that. He was my wise counsel. And like the things that God was telling me along that way, I was praying a lot. I'd just be like, Lord, what do I do? Like, I don't get this. How do I respond to this? Like, how do I respond to my own feelings in this of like being rejected and being like misunderstood, or just feeling like, why? Like, I just didn't get it. And the Lord was leading me to things. And Paul was confirming those things. Paul was like giving shape to those things that God was calling out of, like, Brian, this is what I intend. This is how you operate in this. This is how you operate, which is no different than you should operate any other time. Be humble, be kind, be patient, and trust me. Like, love these people. Love Amy. Be patient. Trust me. Like, it just was this, like, over and over. And Paul kept confirming that, like, I'd run through with him, like, here's what I'm thinking now. We had another conversation, and this is what I don't know how to do it. And God was so faithful. It's like, it was similar to where she had said that she reflects back and says, wow, God must really love that man, and God must really love me. And this for me was that moment, that time of just being like, the way when I would interact with her mom and dad, and maybe, I don't know, we haven't talked about, maybe your mom and dad, like, you're like, oh no, you were a jerk. I don't know. I don't think so. But I just remember so many conversations, so many things that I would, interactions in some way, whether it's writing or whatnot. And I would just be like, wow, Lord, like, how, like, only your Spirit could have given me peace and calmness in that way. Only you who could have helped me be humble and loving in that way, and patient, and not be angry or lash out. Like, only you could have been with me, and it being like, you must really love her, and you must really love me, and you must really love them. And yeah. So eventually it got to the point to where, okay, my engagement plans, these are not going to work out. And I forget, did I tell you before I came out for Thanksgiving?
Mm-hmm.
So we had planned a time, and this was actually all part of the ruse, was that I would come out for Thanksgiving, and it was a part of that. I was actually going to come earlier and then surprise her, and we get engaged, and then we'd be able to be together for the week. So that was off, but I ended up calling her at one point and telling her, I want to marry you. And I asked your dad for your hand in marriage, and it's not going well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But opened a whole new door and chapter in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't remember if I had conversations with my parents first and then you, or I don't remember exactly, but I know that I was subsequently having conversations then with Brian and then with my parents. And yes, this entered a different part in our relationship. And again, I kind of think of it also as the interruption, but just a different interruption. So earlier where we talked about our relationship was interrupted by our choosing, and then it was better off. Like I see this as another one of those, an interruption that then we were better off for. Because I think that if we had gotten engaged when he was planning, we would have missed out on a really hard, but so good, such a good season.
So refining.
Refining, that's the word. Yeah. Yeah. So from then on, it was a very refining season. So actually Thanksgiving, like all of our plans went out the window. I mean, his original plans, and then we had originally had plans to visit my family in Ohio for Thanksgiving, but then I got sick. And so we ended up staying and having Thanksgiving with the family. It was like a cold. It wasn't COVID, back then. So you could still be around people. We had Thanksgiving with the family who ran the discipleship program. But I think that all of that was very meaningful because the plans we had, although it was like the hard things, we were to be together. We walked around the property. We walked around the town that I was living in. I'm sure we did some fun things there, but I just remember a lot of we did. Yeah. Oh yeah. We went to like a lumberjack feud show.
I loved it.
In Tennessee, they have like silly entertainment.
In Dollywood. It was great.
Yeah. So I was working with Dollywood which is Dolly Parton's theme park. And so, when we went, Brian called it, there's like a whole strip of all these different, it's like wholesome Las Vegas is what you called it.
Yeah.
Where it's like family dinner shows. And so anyway, working at Dollywood, I got a lot of perks. So we did do fun things, but I just really remember like the hard conversations, the walks, and not just conversations, but internal wrestlings. And from the conversations that I had had with my parents, I was wrestling with things that they brought, just in terms of, like I mentioned, the tense relationship with my mom with a past relationship. Like looking back, like she saw things and she brought them up to me, and they were good, and I shouldn't have been in that relationship. So now reflecting on, they're bringing these things up. Like, is she right again? Are they right again? Like, or just wrestling with that and like taking their points, like taking what they're, and I think of it as, like, as Christians, sometimes we refer to the defending of our faith as apologetics. And I think that I know for me, I went through a time of like apologetics about our relationship, of doubting, of questioning, Brian and who he is in our relationship, who we are together, and looking at that and thinking, like, processing through that. And then just, it was wonderful to have the family there who during the discipleship program to spend time with them too, and to share with them what was going on, and to get Dennis and Shanna Fuller, their names, and just get Shanna's feedback on it, and was really helpful. And just her insight, she was very like looking ahead, and I just so appreciated that, of looking ahead to like, this is what it is in marriage and your relationship with your parents, and just she really spoke a lot of counsel that is still really helpful. But I think during that season in Tennessee, and then also to follow, because we didn't end up getting engaged until March. So having the time in Tennessee while he was out there, and then even when you flew back to California, to have those times to wrestle, and even to do it apart was good. I think. Doing it apart. Yeah. So I know that.
Well, I didn't like it. It's good.
Well, and then I came back, and there was an opportunity for me to take a job again at Forest Home starting in January when I came back. And I was talking with the boss there, and I was so close to accepting it. And I just had this, like, I don't think I should. And I don't know why, but I don't think I should. And so without any other opportunities, I didn't know what else I would do. I didn't accept it. And I think that was actually so good, because instead of taking that job and living at Forest Home again, I actually went, and for a time I lived with my parents. For a time I lived with friends in Southern California. It was kind of a very like back and forth. I had friends getting married, so I was kind of traveling a lot. But my dad and I together went to a pre-engagement workshop seminar together. And the whole idea of it was that you go to counseling before you get engaged, because you work through counseling, and then the engagement season is a planning for the wedding. So rather than doing both like all at once. So my dad and I went to that together during that time when I was in Sacramento, and it was run by a counselor. And it's funny to be like, well, I went with my dad, not my like future spouse, but it was something that was the note, like that was the interruption. So working interruption, but like we said, in a good way. It's easier for me to say in a good way, because I don't have as many of the emotional ties that Brian did going through that season. But I think that was a crucial point for me, like, and then, working through it with Brian. And then the time when I was back at Forest Home, because I did end up back at Forest Home, I just remember being at the prayer chapel there and praying, and Brian saying, Amy, there might be a point when we need to actually go against your parents. Like there might be a point. And I remember like that was really hard for me. And I went to the prayer chapel and I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And I just remember telling Brian, I'm praying that doesn't happen. I am praying that doesn't happen. I am now getting closer to saying, I know that this is what we should do, but I'm not at the point yet. So can we please just keep wait? Can we wait? Can we just keep waiting? Because we might get to that point, but I'm praying that we don't have to. So that was what that time looked like for me. So.
I think on my end, it was very much another God prying the hands open again, where, or not prying them, but just like being like, keep it open, Brian. Like, right after it's like the whole season, but it looks different actually each step along the way. And I remember after Tennessee, after that, when I went and visited, leaving was really hard. We both cried a lot. And, because there was suddenly, I went from that conversation with Matt of like, yeah, I'm going to marry her. Great. This is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. And she's going to be all for it. Like we're going to do this. To her, you started having doubts about us and about like, if my parents see something, it must be there, or at least it must slow me to pause. And you started questioning things that you hadn't questioned before, or hadn't questioned for a long time. And that to me was really, really hard, because it went all the way back to like, whoa, like we might not get married. Like we might break up. Like it went from like, I'm going to marry this girl to like, we might break up. And I don't feel like I did anything. Like I didn't do anything, but this might totally change. Like, and that was the God really loves her thing of like, he just kept opening my hand during that time. And I remember how often I would drive down to the creek in my little Samurai, and it'd be like raining because it's winter and there's like floods happening, in the creek. If you know anything about Forest Falls, it gets gnarly. And I just like park near the creek, and it's like raging flooding, and I'm like eating a whole box of Cheez-Its, just like crying out to the Lord, like what the heck, God? Like, what do I do? And I'd get like all my rage out with him, and all my frustration and all my anger, and he'd just calm me. And he just really cared for us in that time. By the way, he cared for me. So, yeah, he, I feel like it was this, during that time, like I would have all this, like feeling angry and mad and like unjust, like feeling this injustice in a way like that, like, but then God would set my heart right so that then I could enter back into the relationship with her and with her parents, and to be like, okay, Brian, it's time to set that aside now. Go love her, because she's in a hard space too. And like, I feel like I was able to do that a lot, to just keep coming back to be like, you are in a hard place and I just need to love you, because these are your parents and you're wrestling with these things, and that's hard. And so how can I support you? How can I care for you through it? And that's like, God was just so faithful. So faithful. It was really hard though. But what came out of that, like she said, it's one of those things where I'm like, we were better off because of it. That refined us. That made us stronger, to where we went into it of like, yeah, I want to marry this girl. And she's like, yeah, I think I want to marry this guy. To like, oh, like maybe we're not even going to be together in any way. To God just made us so strong to the point where it was, oh no, this is good. Like even with this, like for lack of a better terminology, this like assault, this testing, it refined us and clarified, nope, this is good. Like to where the resolve about our marriage and about us getting married and this relationship being like, God is for this, was all the stronger because of that testing. And we were better off because of it. I'm thankful for it. I can say truly, I'm thankful for it now. I'm so grateful for it. I wouldn't want it again. I wouldn't wish that on somebody, but that process, but I do wish on them the refinement of it and the Lord who is with them in it and refines them and takes care of them. So it was really good. So also we have an awesome relationship. I think they really like me. Like, I'm pretty sure. I know your parents love me and are thankful for me and trust the Lord with you and I and what God has chosen and put together in us. And I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect husband, and they know that, and you know that. And our relationship isn't perfect, but they do know that it's good and that God is with us. Yeah. So
I agree.
I love my in-laws. They're wonderful.
Yeah, I agree.
So then we got married.
8 years this year. Celebrating 8 years this year.
8 years this year. For our marriage, just something at the wedding day. I know you were mentioning your favorite part of our wedding, and I think it speaks to what our view of marriage is and what we've seen in marriage and are continuing to learn in marriage about what the purpose of it is, and continuing to, be straight. But that was when we sang.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share about that?
Yeah. So we got married at Forest Home on the field there. So if you've ever been to camp there, it's the high school field. And there's a large tree that Brian had wanted to get married under, and it's so beautiful. So when we were planning our wedding, we knew like we want to be outside in creation. And I had heard a song by Matt Redman called "Here for You," and what we did is we had our friends. We had a lot of friend help at our wedding.
A lot of friend help.
Two of our friends, one of them played the cello, one of them played the flute. So they did a lot of our music. We also, Brian's roommate at the time was a worship leader, and so he played this song, and we didn't really like organize it too much other than just like,
the song's
can you play this song? And like, we'll sing. I'm not really sure what what the people will do. So honestly, like my favorite moment from our wedding is probably the most awkward, where it was like, where it was a song playing, a worship song, but it wasn't like, worship.
We didn't give anyone lyrics. Nobody knew it.
It was just playing, but it was so special because we were singing, and I got to see the mountains behind with the sun was setting, and it was so beautiful. And Brian had a
beautiful view of a tree and my wife.
Yeah.
And the two of us singing. And
it was just a moment. So the song lyrics, the reason I picked it, we had decided on it together, but I'd found it and brought it to you, and we looked at it, and it said like, "We are here for you. To you, our hearts are open. Nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire." And I look back at our wedding and I remember that time as being so special, because at the wedding you have so many things to follow. Like, okay, these people walk down now. I walk down now with my dad. Like, you say these vows, but like look at the people who are here. But to have a moment of stillness before the Lord, to be still together and to remember the Lord. And so that was so special. I remember just really, really like feeling the Lord's presence and like soaking that in, and knowing like the Lord, we like, and that's part of the song is like, we welcome you with praise. Like, we welcome your presence. We welcome you. And to just start off our marriage with a Lord, you are welcome here. You're welcome. And you are our one desire. And like nothing here is hidden in before you. And so now that has really carried over into marriage to just remember that the Lord is our one desire. And sometimes things might be awkward. Sometimes things might be uncomfortable. But the joy of the Lord is like trumps all of that. Like the joy of the Lord is so much greater that like, it washes away any uncomfortableness, any tension, any uncomfortableness. And so I think that memory of our wedding like carries over into marriage, and is like the meaning of marriage is to grow together and to keep.
We are here for him.
We are here for him. Yeah.
We are here for him. And I think that's just the definition that God led us to and keeps bringing us back to. No matter how imperfectly we navigate it. Mm-hmm. Marriage has been good. It's been really good. We've been talking a long time, so I guess we won't get into much of that. But other than to say, I think a lot of the things that we learned through dating, we've learned the hard way at times, are absolutely true in marriage. That we're still here for him.
Yeah.
That I still need to be open-handed with my wife. That she's his, not mine. That. Yeah. What are the purpose of our marriage is not to be ingrown, but to be outward, to love each other in such a way that the world sees God in our love for one another. And that's only going to happen if we love God first. Yeah. That's been a process. Conflict is a reality of marriage. Even if, our dating, we really liked each other and it went easy. And it's so much easier being married to you than it would be to anyone else. And yet I know that God still uses the edges that I have and the edges you have to knock them off each other. Yeah. And he is doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conflict's inevitable. So be with somebody who you can navigate conflict with.
Yeah.
because you're going to have to.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
I guess that's it.
Thank you for listening to our story.
Yeah. Thank you for listening all this time. We hope it blesses you.